Hi, I'm Jim Linnell. A lot of folks often get requests to do the same pattern over and over again, and they really don't want to have to trace every single line every time. So leatherworkers a long time ago figured out how to do tap-offs, and I'd like to show you how tap-offs are made. I've come up with several pattern packs, and a couple of these are entitled tap-off tracings. And so let me show you how to use those to create some reusable patterns for your leatherworking. I've selected one of the pattern pages out of one of the pattern packs, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to take and make a reusable tap-off with this pattern right here. So what I've done is I've put it on a piece of tracing material, and I've got a piece of leather here. It's all moistened. It's ready for me to trace that design on there. And main thing, now this is a corner pattern, so what I want to do is kind of, I've got a piece of leather here with a square corner on it, and so I want to position this on that piece of leather so that it's kind of an even distance away from the edge of the leather all the way around. And so I'll lightly trace the outline on there. And all we need when we're doing tap-offs is just the basic pattern. We don't need any of the detail. It's just like when you're tracing a design on your leather. The whole idea behind tap-offs and the way they started was probably the result of a saddle maker. Saddle makers, you know, they when they carve a saddle, they usually have mirror images. Whatever they put on one side, on one fender or one skirt, they want a mirror image of that on the other side. And rather than to make sure that they are mirror images, what they would do is cut that design into the leather on one side and then moisten the other one before they actually start stamping it, and lay it over onto the other skirt or other fender and tap it off. That way they'd have two patterns that are identical each other, just mirroring each other. So that's kind of where the origins of these came from. But they're so usable on so many different things. One of the places they get used a lot is with like when you're doing belts. Belts usually are repeating design. You use, you know, you'll do a section of a pattern and then it repeats itself as you go down the length of the belt. Well, again, having to trace that again and again and again, really this is a real advantage when you have a tap off of that pattern, especially if it's a design that you use a lot. It can really save a lot of time in this tracing process. This here is a corner pattern, and it's kind of uniform in that it's balanced. So we don't have a left and a right version of this, but if we had a left and a right version, we'd have to go ahead and trace it again. Remember, when you're doing a tap off, what you're going to get is a mirror image of what you're tapping off here. So if I had a leaf that's curving one direction, it's going to curve the other direction when I turn it and tap it off onto the piece of leather. So once you've got your design traced on, then go ahead and cut it into the leather. Now make sure you're cutting good and deep. Normally there are rules. If I was going to actually carve this piece of leather, if I was going to actually stamp it out, we've got rules about how deep we would cut. But when you're doing tap-offs, having good deep cuts that open up nice and even are really important. You don't want to have undercutting issues and things like that. So make sure that you use good form and good technique when you're doing this. So once you get finished up with your cuts and you got it all cut in there, the next thing you would do with this is let this completely dry out. One of the things that kind of helps with that is if you dry it out quickly, sometimes these cuts will open up a little bit more, and that can be helpful in giving you some good lines to follow. One of the other things that should be done with a tap off that you are going to use is that you ought to coat this once it's dried and opened up. Coat it with some kind of a leather sealer. They used to use neat lac and that sort of a product, but use an acrylic, something that would make it water resistant, because you're going to be using this against dampened leather. So that's why you would want to have some kind of a water resistant finish on there. I'm going to set that one aside for just a second and let that dry a little bit, and we'll use it here in a second. But I'm going to show you another one. I've got a tap off here that's been around for a long time. This one here is for a section and a belt, and this is one that has been got a finish on it and so forth. And if we wanted to now make that design on another piece of leather, we would dampen it down, we'd case it like we just did here, and we'd lay that upside down, position it where we need to, and then we would use a hammer to tap that on. And I said hammer in that the best thing to use is a cobbler's hammer. It's one that would have, for the most part, a smooth rounded face on it. This helps a lot. If you can use your regular mallet or maul that you have, but it's good to have something that does not ding up your leather when you're doing this. You don't want to have something with cleats on it. But literally, this is where it gets the name tap off. You basically just tap that design off onto your piece of leather, and make sure that you get it everywhere. And then let's see what we got here. Would you look at that? We have that design ready for us to now begin the cutting, and we're ready to go. So that really is how easy it is to use a tap off. This one that we just did, and I know it's not completely dry yet, but if we had a notebook or a wallet or something like that we wanted to put that corner pattern on, we would again dampen that piece of leather down. And because we have a square corner on here, I can just line that up with the square corner on my piece of leather here. And again, this should be, like I said, dried out and have a finish on it and everything, but it's going to do the same thing. And look there, we've got that design that I just cut into this other piece of leather is now raised lightly on that piece of leather, and it's ready for me then to take my swivel knife, cut the design in, and I'm ready to start carving. So that's just how easy they are. They're really helpful, and those patterns that you do a lot of, having a tap off ready to use will really speed up your work.